Okay, so your first step, make sure you get everything together, mise en place. Get everything you need, measuring cups, tablespoons, materials, whatnot, and then you're ready to get started. So the first thing we're gonna do is bloom the yeast. I always do this, not everybody does, but I think it makes for better bread. All that means is that you're gonna feed your yeast and wake it up once it gets out of the freezer, where it should be in the freezer. So make sure that your water is between 90 to 110 degrees. Anything over, you're going to kill your yeast. Warm tap water is fine. Just make sure it's not scalding. What we're going to do is 1¼ cups of water. You should have your recipe list with you. And to this, we're going to start by giving our yeast some food, which is white sugar. We're going to do a tablespoon of white sugar right into the water. You should also have a whisk or a fork nearby. So now each recipe that you read about bread will call for 1 package of yeast. All that means is 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. It also says that on your yeast container, hopefully. So to the sugar water, we're going to do 2 teaspoons and then 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, just right in there. All right. So mix this up very well. You don't want any lumps. Don't worry, you're not hurting the yeast at all. Just make sure that you give it a really good mix to get that sugar kind of dissolved and that yeast activated. When you're done with that, you're going to let this sit for 10 minutes just on the counter. It's fine. It's going to bloom up. So you're going to start seeing foam. Your yeast is going to start eating and it's going to expand. I actually have a little time-lapse video for you. But just let that sit and you should have a nice sponge top on top of your yeast mixture after 10 minutes. So, ooh, look at it grow. There it goes. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to start making our dough. We're going to take our mixing bowl and add 2 cups of white flour to it. We did do a whole wheat and white flour mixture in this video, but start with the white flour. It'll make for a better dough. Even if you do want whole wheat, start with these 2 cups of white flour, okay? So 2 cups of white flour into the bowl, and at this point you want to add your salt. I did 1 teaspoon, but should say on your recipe sheet that you can add anywhere from 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt depending on how you like it. And you can also omit the salt. You don't have to have it. So put your salt in at this point. And now we're going to add the yeast mixture, which should be nice and foamy, to that 2 cups of flour. So we're going to stir this up very, very well. We're going to get all the lumps out of it. This is the base or the starting sponge for our dough. So just mix this extremely well. Make sure it's really nice and smooth. Awesome. So now at this point, I add my non-fat dry milk. This step you can skip also. This is just a tenderizing agent that a lot of recipes recommend. Besides non-fat dry milk, you can also use dry potato flakes or even a cup of mashed potatoes. And that'll also tenderize your bread. But we're doing 1/3 cup of the dry non-fat flour, or non-fat milk, excuse me, at this point. So 1/3 cup. And that can go right into this mixture. Obviously very professional measuring going on. Awesome. So give this a really good stir. Make it smooth again. Just keep mixing. All right, and once that's really nice, cohesive, and smooth, we're going to start slowly adding our flours to this mixture. Never add all of your flour all at once. That's a real easy way to ruin a dough. At this point, Dad, you can just add your whole wheat flour if that's what you want to use. Remember that whole wheat flour is very thirsty, so you always want to make sure if you're doing that your dough is a little more hydrated than dry. You want to add your flour in anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 cup intervals or sections because you don't want to add too much. It's really easy to overflour a dough. But just start slowly adding your flour until your dough starts to pull away from the sides cohesively and starts to form a ball. Right now it'll still be really pasty and wet, but you just as you add it, you'll notice it'll start to pull together on its own. So just Be patient and slowly add your flour. And kind of use your spoon like I'm doing here to make sure you get your walls and the bottom. A lot of times flour pockets form underneath or on the bottom of the bowl because people don't stir under there. So just make sure that you get your spoon or spatula or whatever you're using, even your hands, and that you get all over that bowl so you're not forming flour pockets. So it'll start to get harder to stir it. That's good. We're going to keep stirring. Kind of pulling away now almost. Awesome. So you'll see that I'm starting to kind of pull together here. That's good. At this point, you can start using your hands, absolutely, once it starts to form more of a ball and it starts to get more difficult to use a spoon. Make sure you have a nice clean surface to work on, no debris or anything, because I have gotten stuff in dough before, but anyway, so we should be getting close. We're going to start thinking about getting this onto the counter. Alright, so we're going to clear off a space. Sorry, camera goes a little out of focus here. Don't worry, we come back just before the important stuff, but luckily I have a helper who caught that. So clear off your space, make sure there's no dust. I always wipe down my area with kind of some bleach solution before, but make sure it's really dry. Grab a little cup or some kind of, or even use your measuring cup to get a little flour for dusting ready, because you're going to want that as you start to knead. Oh, there we go. We're back in focus. Alright, so go ahead and dust your surface lightly. You don't need too much, just enough to keep it from sticking to the table or counter, and your hands. You can also dust your hands. So go ahead and just pour this out into your little area. Try to get everything out of the bowl and off your spoon. You can use a butter knife also. That helps get off the spoon. I just use my hands. Alright, so we're going to start kneading. Be light with your dusting, but go ahead and start kneading. We're going to knead for 6 to 8 minutes. You want your dough to be springy and soft, but not too tacky. You don't want it to be hard or if it doesn't have any stretch, or if it becomes too dense, then we've probably done too much flour, but we want to keep it soft, springy, and responsive to the kneading. So at this point, the only flour we're adding should be light dusting. Okay, so it's been about 8 minutes in this video, and you can see we have a really good dough ball. It's still sticking a little bit to our hands, but not nearly anything we're worried about. You just want a nice soft ball like this, and you can test for good gluten formation by lightly poking it with your fingers. If it springs back, that means that we have good gluten, that we have, we've built some strength in the dough, so now it's boop. So you see when you poke it and it pops back, that means we've got good spring. That's a good thing. At this point, our dough is ready for its first rise. So, and this took me for this dough about 8 minutes. So shape it by gently rolling it in your hands and pushing under with the side of your hand. You can also use this method to shape your loaves later, but just kind of form it into a nice round ball. There should be no tearing. It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be any pockets of air. It should just be a nice round ball. All right. So at this point, we're going to set it up for proofing. We'll need a large bowl, something that will allow it to expand to twice its size. Perfect. You want to use canola oil, you can use butter, lard, anything that you want. You can grease this bowl. You want to grease the bottom, the sides, and the top of your dough. So that way while it's expanding, it's not sticking and hindering the proofing process. So just kind of get your walls, and then I always rub the top of the dough with the oil as well. That also hydrates the top of the dough so that as it's rising, it's not tearing, or it doesn't get a sticky skin, which is grody. All right, so we're gonna get our dough into the bowl, and we're gonna need, I use plastic bags because I find they kind of help keep warmth and moisture in. Try to stay away from tea towels. Sometimes they have smells that will get into your dough, and that's kind of wacky, but all right, so go ahead and set this up in a nice warm area, not directly in the sun, but somewhere 70 to 80. You're gonna let it rise for about an hour to an hour and a half, or until it's doubled. All right, so let's check our dough. I think it's been about an hour, so we're going to see how we're looking. Perfect. So if your dough has now doubled in size, you'll also know that it's done by taking 2 fingers, pushing down the center of your dough. If your indentation stays, then that means your proofing was successful. So proofing was successful. So now what you want to do is gently deflate by taking it away from the sides and kind of pulling it away from the bowl. You won't need any more flour for dusting or anything like that. Your dough is now joined and glutinous and happy, so it doesn't need anything else but a clean surface. And so now you can begin to think about what shape you want. You can shape it any way you want. This recipe should make you 2 nice round loaves. I did 2 hamburger buns and a braid, but again, you can shape it at this point however you like. You can cut it with a knife. I use my dough cutter, or you can use scissors. It doesn't matter. So just shape your dough as desired, and then you want to get it onto the tray that it's going to be cooking on. So, all right, so now we're going to do second proofing. So once your shapes are made, you want to wrap it again. You can use a bag or you can use cling wrap, doesn't matter, but just always wrap it when it's proofing. Again, this keeps it from forming a skin and hindering the proofing process. We want it to puff up now to form the crumb and the interior texture, so this is why this step is important. Second proofing, always recommended. And once it's wrapped, just the same process as before in a nice warm area. This time only for about 45 minutes to an hour, doesn't need quite as long. You just want them to be noticeably puffy. Not exactly doubled, but nice and big. So go ahead and set that up. All right, so set your oven to 350 while this happens. You want to make sure that you score your bread before it goes in, just to let it grow, and bake your loaves for about 30 to 45 minutes or until they're deep brown and hollow to the tap. Like if you tap them, they're hollow. So, and that's it. Just make sure you bake them long enough, and let me know how everything turns out. Hope you thought this video was helpful. Love you. Bye.